Well, as I said last time, I got my falconry permit, and to say that I was excited is to putting it very mildly. I had worked very hard to get to this moment, and so I was really tormenting my sponsor to take me out hunting for the bird. To digress back a little into the past, the first time my sponsor came out to look at, my backyard to see where I could put the mew. He actually came out to help me decide where in the yard it should go and the like in relationship to the sun and not letting the mew get too hot and things like that. And you remember early on, before I knew anything about falconry, I was going to trap the hawk and haul it away. I actually made a trap because I'd gotten on YouTube. It was called a Swedish goshawk trap. And it was made with these large flaps that collapse like this into a little house peak, and the bird goes down in to get the prey, and the doors close. Not the best kind of trap for a red-tailed hawk. Worked good for goshawks, apparently. I didn't know. I was just going to try to trap this bird. So when my sponsor came out, one of the first things he says is, "You made a Swedish goshawk trap." I'm like, "Yeah." He goes, "Looks good." He goes, "But you're not going to be using that." I'm like, "Yeah, okay, yeah." Yeah, okay. So anyhow, back to trapping the bird. He finally said, "Let's meet." I believe it was a Saturday. He says, "We're going to go out and we're going to find you a bird." He goes, "What we're looking for," he says, "it's been a little warm out here the 1st of October. So we've got to wait until we get a nice cold snap in the air. Then we'll know that the birds are really starting to migrate. They're really going to start showing up in the area. And a lot of these young passage birds will be moving about." I said, "Well, how many birds are you allowed to trap?" He goes, "Well, we got to be sensible, but we can trap a few and pick which one's the best one and turn the rest loose." One of the nice things that he did, and what a lot of falconers do, if you trap a bird and it's not the right type of bird, or it's not a bird that would be special that you want to use for falconry, they bring mite spray for the bird, and you'll spray the bird down, and even though it's going back in the wild, you give it a nice fresh start by killing the mites that are on it. And so I think that's really nice. So anyhow, back to the day. He told me to meet him early in the morning. I believe we met about 7 o'clock in the morning. He told me to bring my giant hood. And that's basically all. I did bring the furniture that he'd loaned to me, the hood and the jesses and things, and brought those back. He says, "We'll make your own anklet and jesses here if we get a bird." So we take off. He goes, "George, he says, it looks like a good day. I think we have a good chance here." He says, "What we're going to do, we're going to go over here." We were out by the Springfield Airport in that area. And we started driving around these industrial parks. I go, "Why is that?" He goes, "I don't know why." I think maybe there's mice and things around the industrial park, but you'll see them sitting on the street, the parking lights or the telephone poles around industrial parks. So off we go. And we drive around, and we went to the first industrial park, nothing. Second industrial park, nothing. He goes, "Wow, I usually find some here." He says, let's go over here to some of this farmland that I know of. And we're driving along, and I go, "What am I looking for?" He goes, "Well, we're looking for red-tailed hawks, and you're wanting obviously a passage bird." He says, "We don't want a haggard." A haggard is a bird that has gone through its first molt, now has a red tail. This is something I recently found out, that the adults, the haggards, will have sometimes a very white chest, very creamy colored, or they'll have a very dark belly band across their chest. A passage bird, a red-tailed hawk, will have a speckly little band across their belly. And so that's one of the things you're looking for. He says, "So you're looking for passage birds?" Yes, of course. Yes, I'm looking. And I'd look, and I looked, and I didn't see any. And he'd go, "There's one." I'd go, Where? He goes, "Right there." I'm like, "Oh, yeah." He goes, "But it's too old." I was like, "Okay, all right." He told me we drove to these farms, and he said, those giant bales of hay that look like shredded wheat, you know, the big rolls. He goes, start looking on those as we're going along. He says, they like to sit on those and wait for the mice and that come out from underneath the bales of hay. And so I started watching those, the birds. He's like, George, I don't want to make you feel bad, but you might be jinxed. I'm like, come on. He goes, I usually see birds by now. And he's like, I can't tell how much he's joking, you know. He's like, wish we'd see some birds, you know. I'm like, yeah, me too. So we keep looking. And we keep going further out away from Springfield. We're heading west, as far as I can tell, kind of north and west. And we're weaving down these roads. And I noticed you see some down on those big power lines, those big power grid, you know, going through the farmland. He could see it one out there. He goes, there's one there, but it's a little too far away. I don't think he'd come to our trap. Oh, I got to talk to you about the trap here in a minute, because it's a special trap. And then he goes, oh, look, there's another one. I go, there's two of them. Maybe. He goes, no, they're together. He goes, but they're pretty far apart. He goes, yeah, it doesn't matter to them. You see two of them in the same vicinity, and they're not fighting with one another, and one's not chasing the other one. They're mates. I was like, So he goes, no point even trying to trap those. The trap. Let me go back to the trap. The trap that we use is called a balchatry trap. And I'll try to describe it, and maybe we'll have a picture or a diagram to show you here in just a minute. Anyhow, this trap is, they're made slightly different. I don't know if my sponsor wants to give away his little secret recipe on his twist on the trap, so I'll just describe them in general. Basically, you have a platform, a small platform, with a wire dome over it. If you can visualize that, it may be usually circular kind of a dome. And there's a little door where you can put a mouse or a gerbil or a hamster, whatever you're using, and shut the door, right? It's got, technically a bird of prey could dive down and kind of jab and get his claws and might be able to grab this little gerbil or rodent if he could get down in this little small dome. But on top of this dome, you put another wire dome further away from that dome so the bird can't actually get to the creature and kill it. So the gerbil, the rat, the hamster is safe. On this outside dome are these fishing lines with slip knots in them, and it's just covered, tied to this outer cage. So that's the trap, basically. The theory is as you're driving along, if you see a bird that you want to trap, you toss the trap out, and you drive on by. You want to stay the trap in sight where you can see it. You're responsible for anything that's trapped in that cage, trapped in the trap. So, and the idea is the bird obviously sees it, dives down, tries to grab it, and in theory, hopefully, it'll try hard enough that one of those little slip knots of fishing line, it'll get caught on its foot or its claw, and it won't be able to get away until you rush up and you have trapped a bird. So that's what we're trying to do. I'm ready. I'm holding the cage, he's driving, and we keep looking. And we go and look, I'd say about 3 or 4 hours. And he's, George, he says, I don't get it. He says, I always find hawks. I don't know what's the problem with you, but it has to be you, it can't be me. And he's just digging at me here, He goes, seriously, George, he says, I don't know, but we may have to give up. He says, George, I'm going to try one last thing. I'm going to take you to my magic spot. I'm like, magic spot? Okay, well, man, I'm getting tired of looking. Let's I'm ready, So he starts driving, and we're going out. All I'm going to tell you, it was way out west of town in a specific location. But as we're driving out, if you get out west of western Missouri, you get out near Kansas, the trees start getting fewer and fewer, and you start getting this flat, farmland. He goes, the reason we're going out here, George, is that, he says, we probably passed hundreds of red-tailed hawks, and we couldn't see them because they're down in the trees. And leaves hadn't even fallen yet in early October. He says, we can't see them in the trees. They may be there. We're looking for ones we can see in a dead tree or a telephone pole. So, he's taking me to the magic spot. So we're driving along, and he goes, when we get to the magic spot, he says, I've sometimes seen every other telephone pole have a hawk on it. 3 or 4 hawks just down the road. And I'm like, okay, I'm ready. So we're driving, and we're getting pretty far out west. And he goes, we're here. And I'm like, I'm expecting to see like a little magic glen, a little dale, or a little clearing in a forest with sparkling dew. It's the magic spot. And we're just driving down this country road. He goes, this is it. I'm like, okay. He goes, I always find birds here. We drive. And I don't see a bird. And he doesn't see a bird. And he's looking at me like, you're messing up my magic spot. And then all of a sudden, he goes, there's one. I didn't see it. He goes, it was on that fence. And he cuts into this little farm road. And we back up, and I'm looking. He goes, it's in that field somewhere. And I'm looking, and as I'm looking, he goes, nope, it's back up on the telephone pole. And we back out. And he goes, get your window down, come on, hurry. And he's gigging me. And I'm like, okay, and I'm rolling the window down. And he told me he's going to go slow along the road, and I'm to rock this cage so that when I toss it, it will, traveling with the car, it will land flat on the ground, if you can visualize what I'm talking about. All right. So here we go. And just as we get kind of close to that telephone on the far side of the road, I toss it out, and we head down about 100 feet down the road into this little side road at a cemetery, I believe it was. And before I can even lean to look to see the hawk on the telephone pole, my sponsor goes, he went for it. I'm like, oh, okay. And he's backing out. He goes, he may not be trapped, but he dove down. And we're pulling up. And he goes, we got one, And we jump out of the car. And he goes, oh, God, it happened so fast. Actually, it's a little bit of a blur. Let me think. We run up. I had some bird spray. We had a little bird mite, and but this thing's got claws on it, and he had his work gloves on, and he kind of grabbed the claws and started undoing the fishing line loops off of the talons, and he had me kind of holding the wings, and then we kind of sprayed it with mite spray, and I forgot to tell you, he also told me he told me to carry the tube. There was this large PVC tube I had to bring with us, and I was responsible for carrying the tube along with the trap. He said, get the tube. So I ran and got the tube, and we slid the bird into this tube. Now, so the bird's wrapped up, not wrapped, but in the tube so it can't spread its wing, and the claws are in his hand. He used some masking tape to tape up the claws so they couldn't grasp. And I believe he hooded the bird at that time, if I remember right. And then he kind of went and handed me the tube and said, here's your bird. And I'm like, okay. And we got the trap up, and we drove back home, back to his farm. And I'm holding this tube with this bird in there. And I'm just like, it's interesting because you visualize what it's going to be like trapping a bird of prey, and it happens so fast. You're just like, it just happened fast. All I can say is it was relatively easy. Well, it was easy for my sponsor. He'd grabbed many a bird's claws and the like. I don't know what had happened if I'd reached down to try to grab the talons, but he certainly knew what he was doing. So I had my bird. We took it back to his farm. And at that time, he actually cut pieces of leather, small pieces of leather that were measured to wrap around the bird's legs, his lower leg, and we put what you call brads in there, those with holes in them, and those are what the jesses were going to fit through. These are called, if I pronounce it right, Almiri jesses, because you have a hole in the anklet. The anklet's attached to the leg, but the jess is not attached to the anklet. The danger of falconry for the bird is the bird getting a jess that is used to help hold the bird caught in a tree when it's hunting, right? And so you don't want the jess literally tied to the anklet because the bird would never be able to escape and would die. So it's a much safer jess. So he cut the anklets, we put them on, he put the jesses in. He gave me a buffalo hide gauntlet. He says, I'm lending this to you because you're going to start manning this bird. And when they first get them, they're very frightened. And believe it or not, some birds can actually are such a strong grip, they can pierce a normal gauntlet used for falconry. And so I'm giving you this buffalo hide gauntlet for a few days until it calms down, and then you'll be able to switch to a normal gauntlet, right? So he hands me the bird. We put the bird in the giant hood. He had the hood on it, and it was calm. He told me to take it home. One of the things he did when we trapped it, he felt its throat. This is its crop. And he felt to see how full it was. He goes, this bird has just eaten, so it's not going to be interested in you. So please understand, the bird is calm and safe in your giant hood. Just leave it in the giant hood. Really? He goes, no, you don't want to put it in the mew yet. It's still wild. You've got to man the bird. And so for 2 days, just let it sit in the giant hood. They're used to sitting around after they've eaten. You're not being cruel in the least. The bird is calm, the bird is safe, and it's digesting its food. So wait for 2 days, and then you're going to take it out, and you're going to hold the bird with the buffalo-eyed glove, because it's going to be digging into that thing, and you're just going to be sitting in some very dim light. Candlelight, a dim night light, just enough so the bird can see you and you can see the bird, but it's so dark the bird is not going to want to try to fly away. It's just going to be looking at you like you're crazy and you're going to want to eat it. And the idea is for you to look at the bird and the bird to look at you. Well, don't stare at the bird and look aggressive, but to be with the bird and let the bird be with you. And you'll notice there's going to be a point when you're going to know the bird is starting to relax. And he gave me 2 things that you're going to look for. And the first thing was it will rouse. And rousing, it'll start shuddering its feathers, and that means it's sort of shaking off the tension and it's getting more relaxed. Okay, good. And the other thing you're going to look for is for it to smack its lips. And I look and he goes, you're going to know what I'm talking about. I go, literally, will I hear it smack? He goes, no. I guess maybe got your ear close enough to its mouth, but I wouldn't advise that, but it might hear a sound. But no, but you'll know what I'm talking about when you see it. So the idea was to be with the bird. For once the 2 days passed and I got the bird out sitting in dim light, I noticed eventually it did start rousing and sort of stopped looking at me like, are you going to eat me? It sort of just looked more curious. And I could tell it just was less defensive around me. So my sponsor said to get some chopsticks and some stew meat. Or he said lean beef. I decided I'd get some stew meat. It was already cut in little cubes. And start seeing if he'll offer it food. Once I started trying to offer it food, it looked at me like I was crazy again. Because the only other animal that's going to give it food was its mother and father when it was a young baby. And its mate might share food. Any other animal is either food or wants to eat you as food. So as I started offering this bird food, it's hard to describe, but the bird just looked at me like, what are you doing? It doesn't make any sense. You know, you could see it processing. I think it took about a half a day of me coming back in, maybe a day. And then all of a sudden it just kind of took a piece of meat. And after that, something clicked in its head, and it was like, this is a good deal. I don't have to sit on a telephone in the cold. I've got a guy here stupid enough to give me food. So it started wolfing down food. My sponsor told me we're going to lower its weight. He also weighed the bird while we were at his farm before he put the anklets on, and the bird weighed 1,100 grams. He says, we're going to start lowering that bird down, and you're going to look for certain behavior. Somewhere near 900 grams, we should start noticing the bird appetite really picking up. So that's what we're going to start doing. So as you're manning and getting it to eat food, we are going to feed it. I want you to start, let's see, 20 grams of stew meat a day. That's roughly the amount that would fit in a shot glass. I was like, okay. And that should give it food, but its weight will start dropping down so that we can start watching its behavior with that, which is what I proceeded to do. And as I told him its behavior and how well it was doing, he says, well, start backing up. And so I got about 6 inches away from the bird. And it had to lean to get the food, to take the food. Doing that a few times, I got a little further back where it could not reach the food unless it hopped to the glove. My sponsor said, this is your moment of truth. He says, it's a stupid thing for you, this little hop to your glove, but for that bird to leave a secure resting place and hop to a wiggling glove on a human is a big deal for it. And so you really want that to happen. It probably took a day for this bird to finally go, okay, and it hopped to my glove. After that, I kept backing up, and I'd whistle, and I'd show the meat on my glove, and it began to hop. Finally, it was getting to about 8 feet away, fluttering to my glove. And when I told my sponsor that, he goes, okay, it's ready to go into the mew. So the idea was to move it out into the mew. It is not on a leash or anything. It's what's called free flight. It can hop and flutter around in its mew, and it's free to exercise. It has its bath in there. You don't typically feed its food in the mew because it can get territorial about its mew, and it can create aggression if you aren't careful. That's one of those things about falconry that a novice would know about, and you can, again, it's one of those things, there's certain specific things you have to do in this manning process, or you could train the bird. It's not the bird's fault. You would train the bird not to behave in the way you need it to do to keep the bird safe or to keep you safe. So I guess I should say at this time, any information I'm telling you, I'm an apprentice. I'm not an expert on this. And certainly the information I'm telling you is the high points. I'm not getting into a lot of the detail and specifics and things that you really need to know to keep your bird safe, healthy, and to have a good experience. So I want you to appreciate the experience I'm going through, but in no way think that I am teaching you anything that would allow you to become a falconer. Certainly you don't want to be trapping birds without a falconer's permit because it's a federal offense. So I needed to say that. Anyhow, I had a great advantage when it came to manning my bird because there comes a point I could not. He had already flown 8 feet across my room. I had no more space indoors to train this bird. The time was now as I had to start taking the bird outside on a long tether line to get it to come to me 20, 30, 40, 50, eventually 100 feet. So my sponsor said, I want you to do something. I want you to come out to my barn when you start doing this things on the creons, because it's a pain in the butt with a long tether when you're in grass or short scrub, because the creons gets tangled in the grasses and things, and it makes it difficult for your bird to fly to you. He says, you have a football field or something you could get to? And I was like, well, I don't know. I guess I could call one of the high schools or something, but I don't know what they think about a bird flying. I don't know, He's like, well, I tell you what. Come out to my barn. I have a huge barn. He has like 3 barns in one. And we're going to train your bird on the creons indoors. And when you get it to come to you, let's say 80 feet, then it'll be ready. We'll free flight it. We'll turn it loose in the barn, and we'll let it fly around there. So I took it out about every other day. I'd go out to his cold barn. I had what's called a bow perch. It's a bow-shaped perch that I set the bird on, and it was a long tether attached to my glove. The line went from the bird to a ring on my falconer's glove, and I kept backing up and getting this bird. I'd blow the whistle and getting it to come, and it took about a week to get it to come a good 80 feet to me. Maybe almost 2 weeks to get it to consistently come, with a great response immediately. I mean, I could get it to sit there and think about it a while, but I needed to come quickly. Once I did that, he says, okay, he shut all the doors in his barn, and he says, just set your bird over there on that, what is it? I don't know, it's a piece of equipment of some sort of farm equipment. Set it over there, and told me to go on the far side of the barn. And this was another exciting experience because the bird didn't have to come to me. I mean, and there I'm standing, and without any tether on it at all, here it comes flying. And when they fly, they drop low. They don't fly down at you. They come down low and then up onto the perch. And here she came, swooping up and landed on my arm, And it's like, this bird trusts me, I was like, wow. Then he had built these high, I don't know, about 20 feet tall perches. And he says, climb up a ladder and put her on that. And then he told me to go down between these two old farm vans he had, pickups and things in the barn. And it was kind of narrow through there. And he said, see if she'll come now. Come now. And I blew the whistle, and she came down and tucked her wings to go between those two trucks and then spread out and landed. It was such a great maneuver. The next step now, after about 3 or 4 days of that, was to take her outside without any leash on her or anything. And this would be true free flight. And we took her out, and he was like, he left the leash on her for a minute. He said, I want to see what she does outside. She may freak out, want to try to fly away. They can. It's important you understand that this bird, once it is out hunting, it really is just doing its thing, and it could leave at any time. And sometimes they do. They just fly away and go, I'm just going to do it on my own. Most of them, because they've been conditioned now to trust you and you're an easy source of food, will come back to you. But you just never know. So we took her outside. She seemed calm enough that we let her go. And we walked her around. She went up in a tree, and I called her back. And he says, looks like you got a good bird, George. And we didn't go hunting that day, but he says, let's next time we go out, we're going to take her out in the pasture and at least practice hunting. He says, we don't have a lot of squirrels out here, but we might find some rabbits and things, but let's give it a shot. So the next time we go out will be an actual hunt, maybe a practice hunt, but we're going to give it a shot. And I don't think it's really official, but I think a lot of falconers feel this way. I don't feel I'm going to be a true falconer until I actually take her out and she catches prey with me along for the ride. And then I can say that I have gone the whole distance as far as what it means to be a falconer. So I'm really looking forward to the hunting process.
Thanks again for listening to Exploring the Ozarks. Make sure to like, share, and subscribe to our social media channels to help us keep exploring the stories of the Ozarks. If you're looking for more ways to support our show, we have sponsorships for businesses and Patreon for individual supporters. Check the links in the description for more details. Thanks for your support, and keep exploring the Ozarks.